ahead and get started. So as a reminder of our APUSH norms, we are all in. Attendance and cold call responses are impacting a quiz grade every single week, every other week. And Zoom expectations, your video should be on, your microphones are off, and you are only using the chat when prompted. Thank you so much for using the chat earlier to let me know if you're having any technical issues. Google Classroom is where you can find all assignments in Nearpod available. As a reminder, your homework is due tonight at 8 o'clock, and make sure you have a constructive learning space set up for yourselves. So we are now going into our due now, which is page 1 of our classwork. I am going to give us 3 minutes to review the due now. Be prepared to share out your response in Nearpod. 3 minutes to complete page 1 of your classwork. Go ahead and get started. "90 more seconds. "45 more seconds, and then we're going to share out our responses in the Nearpod. Great, go ahead and share your responses into the Nearpod. The Nearpod is now open. Awesome, I see 1 response. Awesome. It looks like everybody in the Nearpod is in a mutual agreement that C is the strongest. Shakeem, can you please unmute and share why C is the strongest?
It says C was the strongest because it was more specific about talking about just the American Revolution and not any other revolution. And it connected all the ideas like natural rights that started the revolution.
Great. I'm going to build on what Shakeem said and add that not only is it really specific, it uses key terms and uses the definition of those key terms to set the stage for the American Revolution. So it doesn't just name drop key terms, it defines them and explains how it supports the setup of the prompt. So today I'm going to model strong contextualization for you by thinking aloud as I complete the question. Your task while I do this is to write down the specific steps that I take when I answer these questions. So as a reminder, let's read the contextualization portion of the rubric aloud together. So please transition to page 2 of your classwork. Give us 30 seconds to get there. Page 2 of the classwork. Great, and you should be able to see my page for modeling available on Zoom. So to earn the point for contextualization, the response must relate to the topic of the prompt. So that's the first step. You need to make sure that whatever you're referring to does relate to the prompt. And it relates the prompt to broader historical events, developments, or processes that occur before, during, or continue after the time frame of the question. This point is not awarded for merely a phrase or a reference. So for example, we try to push ourselves to include at least 2 to 3 sentences of context. So you are now going to follow me as I begin to model. So first, I'm going to annotate the question. So in the space, oh wait, here it is. So I need to evaluate the relative importance of the causes that led to the writing of the Declaration of Independence. It's asking me to judge the importance of writing, importance of the causes that led to the writing of the Declaration of Independence. So to do that, I will need to identify what caused the writing of the Declaration of Independence and then judge how important these things are. So now I want to brainstorm what I know about the topic, which in this case are events leading to the writing about the Declaration of Independence. So I know that Jefferson wrote it. And it was made public in 1776. And I know that it was signed by many founding fathers. So in my essay, I'm going to talk about the events happening in North America that led to the Declaration of Independence and American anger from, so I wanted to talk about the events happening in North America that led to the Declaration of Independence and the American Revolution. So now I think about what those things that were happening before. So first, I'm going to think about the Stamp Act, maybe the Intolerable Acts. I also think the French and Indian War is important. Also, there was that Boston Massacre, and I know that really made people upset. And the last thing I'm going to include are the First and Second Continental Congress. Should spell continental correctly. So here for my context, so now I've done a lot of brainstorming about what is going to go into my essay. So here for my context, I'm going to describe the movement that led to these ideas. And when I think about the ideas of the Declaration of Independence, I think of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so I know that I should probably talk about John Locke and the Enlightenment. So I definitely want to make sure that in my context, I'm using these things. Also, I realize I'm not writing these steps for you, so let me fix that. Annotate the question. The second is brainstorm. So those are the two steps that we have gone through so far. And now it's time to actually start writing the introduction. And so the third step I have is to name the historical era. That covers the scope of the prompt. This topic covers, and so when I think about the historical era that covers the scope of the prompt, this topic covers the British colonial era. So the historical, the historical era is the British colonial era. So now I need to start thinking about my context and start writing my introduction. And I'm going to show you guys that exemplar in just a moment. But first, I'm going to name that my last step is I want to use causation phrases. And this will show how things are connected to one another. So now we are going to transition to the next page of your classwork. So at the very top of the next page of your classwork, page 3 of that document, we have the exemplar context, which I'm going to read aloud for you, but I'm going to continue sharing my screen in case you did not write down everything. So exemplar.
Excuse me. I have a question. What does number 4 say?
Number 4 says, it's misspelled. Thank you very much for pointing that out. Causation phrases. Fix that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so our exemplar context, you can follow along. This is at the top of page 3. So the exemplar context that I wrote for this prompt is, during the British colonial era leading up to the American Revolution, the founding fathers moved gradually toward a decision to separate from England and form their own country. The writing of the Declaration of Independence formally announced their separation from England and the world in 1776. Jefferson and many of the other founding fathers had been inspired by the Enlightenment, a movement in Europe that emphasized individualism. In particular, John Locke's writings on the idea of natural rights that were God-given qualities given to all people heavily influenced the writing of the Declaration of Independence. Consequently, many Americans read works from the Enlightenment thinkers and sought to incorporate those ideas into their own society and government in ways that would protect individuals and limit the power of government. And as you can see in yellow, I have highlighted the causation phrases that I used. So looking at what I've done, what steps did I take to write my contextualization statement or sentences? So what steps did I take to write my contextualization? Take 90 seconds to chat those steps into the Zoom chat. $90 to chat those. Again, what are those steps that I took? And why are they important? Thank you, Sierra, for starting us off. Thank you, Kayla. Thank you, Shakeem. Thank you, Giovanni. Great, let's go ahead and finish up there. So yes, you want to make sure you are naming the historical era and that you are describing the trends that occurred immediately before the topic of this essay and and using causation phrases to explain how those key terms caused the prompt of the essay. So we are now going to transition into a quick practice. You are going to draft for 2 minutes into page 3 of your classwork. Again, you are going to have 3 minutes to draft a response to your first practice. And then we are going to copy and paste into Nearpod and revise that rough draft for 1 minute. So again, you are practicing and drafting a response to the first prompt. By 1754, distinct colonial regions had developed in British North America, each with significant differences from one another. Develop an argument that evaluates the differences between the colonial regions in British North America. You are going to draft that response in your classwork for 3 minutes. Go ahead and get started. Two more minutes to draft those responses. Again, make sure you are using key terms that directly relate to the content of the prompt. One more minute. please copy and paste whatever you have written into the Nearpod so I can review it. And then we are going to take 2 minutes to revise. So first we are copying and pasting our contextualization into the Nearpod. And then we are going to take some more time to revise. Thank you, Shakim, I got yours. Again, please copy and paste whatever you have done so that way I can see where we are at. Thank you, Arabia. I have yours. I'm still waiting on several more. So please take another 15 seconds to get those submitted. Great. We are now going to set a timer for 2 minutes for us to revise what our initial response is. So while I review what you guys have copy and pasted into the chat, into Nearpod, you are going to take the next 2 minutes to review. 2 minutes to review and revise your responses. Everything that I see in Nearpod is showing me we are off to a great start. One more minute. I'm going to give us a little more time. Please copy and paste your revised responses into the Nearpod. Copy and paste your revised responses into the Nearpod. Awesome start to today. Very writing context takes practice and it takes a little bit of time. So I'm really impressed with seeing the types of key terms that we are using and how we are drafting through our ideas. So my biggest point of feedback on our contextualization statement is make sure that the contextualization that we are using is coming from before the prompt. So make sure that we are discussing things within about 20 years of the prompt existing. And so we are going to practice one more time with our your second round of practice, which is on page 4 of your classwork. You are going to be writing contextualization for the question, the outbreak of the American Revolution was in 1775 was a conflict born out of long simmering tensions between colonists in North America and the royal government of England and its representatives. Develop an argument that evaluates how political and or economic factors led to the American Revolution. So you're looking at how political or economic factors led to the American Revolution. Same thing, except I'm going to give us a little more time. So we are going to take 5 minutes to begin writing our contextualization for this question. Again, 5 minutes to begin practicing. So 5 minutes on the clock to write the contextualization for this question. Go ahead and get started. Three more minutes on this next round of contextualization. 3 more minutes. One more minute on this next round of practice. Great, that was 5 minutes to write your contextualization. We are now going to transition back to the Nearpod, which I cannot find, there it is. And now we're going to work together on the Nearpod to figure out what are the key terms we are using for this round of practice for our contextualization statement. So please take 2 minutes to submit and review the key terms that people used for this contextualization. 2 minutes to submit and review. Wow, I see some really awesome key terms. 1 more minute. Make sure we're going through and hearting the responses that we really like and we think we should incorporate into our contextualization. Great, make sure you go through and review what your classmates have come up with. And so that way we can review together. So there are some really awesome responses in here. The two that I want to highlight are French and Indian War and salutary neglect. Because yes, those stamp acts are super important and we want to consider those debts. But we also want to make sure we're thinking about why those stamp acts, why the Stamp Act, why the Sugar Act, and why the Tea Act were put in place in the beginning. So those taxes are really important, but we need to consider the French and Indian War and salutary neglect in order to be able to understand why those taxes existed in the first place. So we are now going to transition to our exit ticket, where you are going to revise the contextualization that you just wrote. So it is going to be the same, same prompt, same everything, but you're going to revise what you've already written, making sure that you are using the correct key terms and considering what your classmates have shared as well in terms of the key terms that they used. So we're going to take the next 5 minutes to revise our contextualization statement. Once I see that you have submitted a revised contextualization, you are free to go. So we should all be in our exit ticket. Please chat me if you have any questions. Great, Shakeem, you may go. Have a wonderful rest of your morning. Giovanni, great job. You may go. Kayla, great job. You may go. Ciara, you may go. Takia, you may go. Arabia, you may go. Dwayne, you may go. Skyanne, you may go. Great. I'm going to go ahead and end the Zoom call.